Our children worry about us, I think, more than we realize. When our children go off to college, they wonder, are we going to be okay? Because so much of our lives have been focused on them and helping them get there. They kind of wonder, well, who is she going to be if she's not doing this? Are they going to be okay?
Welcome to Sports Mom Rapport, where we support and connect with moms of athletes while sharing helpful advice from each other and some guest experts along the way. This is Tara.
And I'm Destiny. Thank you for joining us as we highlight you incredible moms.
Hey, Destiny. I recently enjoyed watching today's guest, Heather Bolejack, on a YouTube podcast.
I watched that video too. I was captivated by how talented of a speaker she is. Heather is so engaging, and I could listen to her experiences for hours.
Totally. She truly has a gift of storytelling. I am really looking forward to hearing about her upbringing, motivation behind earning a law degree, and any advice she has to share with us.
So am I. Heather is a sports mom whose son overcame a major injury. I'm sure she'll share with us about that experience today. Heather is such a forward thinker, and I'm anxious to hear suggestions that she may have for us sports moms.
Without further ado, let's welcome Heather.
So Heather, tell us a little bit about yourself, including your upbringing, and how did athletics play a role in your life?
My name is Heather Bolejack. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana originally, and I grew up in Avon, Indiana, which at that time was very rural. I was the only student of color. I was the only Black girl for many years. So growing up was very different than what it is, I think, for a lot of kids now. I was the diversity in the community. When I think about how athletics really shaped my life, it was a huge part of my identity and self-discovery and finding my way, a way to belong in a community where I was very different. My mother is white. I'm biracial. My biological father is Black. My mom always told me that average wouldn't be good enough. And that was a refrain that I carried with me for many years. So although a lot of people in the community were very kind to me and supportive and had great teachers, you're very aware. You look around the classroom and there is literally not a single other little girl who looks like you. You can't do your hair the way the other girls can. I'm different in every way. To create belonging, a lot of what I did was about achievement. Be a straight A student, all of those things, because I really had that refrain, average isn't good enough. It was intended in a very positive way, but also I carried with me some of the burdens of being an overachiever that can really be very difficult. Early on, my mom did have video. And as a very little girl, I was not even 2, there were videos of me doing forward rolls, just self-taught. I walked and then I started tumbling, basically. And then I would do handstands on the toddler rocking chair. So I was really strong and just had unusual physical ability and was so petite and could walk and run well under 12 months old that my mom said people were just shocked. So they put me in gymnastics. Gymnastics, though, most of your really close friends are all in the gym because that's where a gymnast spends most of her time. One of my best friends, though, did happen to go to my school. I have all kinds of notes that I wrote to her. And she was white. I have these letters back from her to this day that would say, "No, your hair isn't puffy. You look beautiful today." And she would affirm me, and she was my gymnastics best friend, but she was my supporter at school. And so how I gained acceptance and popularity was through winning. I was a very competitive gymnast and took all of those skills over to academics. So I was pretty fearless about a lot of other things. And when I stepped into cross country, track and field in junior high school, to be honest, I just dominated. I took the average isn't good enough probably to an extreme, but it gave me a lot of confidence that wasn't there. It never solved the other pieces. Boys were still not going to date me. So I was the only Black girl. They all admired and respected me and called me on the phone, and they would come and cheer for me in the stands. They thought I was a phenomenal athlete, but it wouldn't fix that part of life yet. But it gave me a great sense of belonging and achievement, and I was very supported in the community. So it can be a way to break down a lot of barriers, and people get to know you who may not have taken that time. That's sort of the beginning of what shaped a lot of my career that would come. And to this day, there are things that I believe that I'm able to cope with and overcome because of being a gymnast very early. You are taught to get up over and over again, to face your fear and throw yourself headlong and hope that you land. And you are trained when you fall down, get up and go again.
I can relate to that on so many levels. I'm just thinking about also being a woman of color and raised by a Caucasian mom and African American father and having to find your place, right? So it sounds to me like in seeking your own place of comfort and seeking your own identity, you created a community through athletics and found a way to, again, succeed and be better than average, but also to make your place and make your mark and then find confidence through that. I think so many people can relate to that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
I admire both of you so much, and I love that you both had gymnastics. I wish I had all those life lessons and resiliency. I look back now and I just feel like they benefit so much and get so much character from being a part of a sport like that. Like you said, everything else kind of came easy for you since gymnastics is so difficult. Touching on your best friend, I'm so happy that you had that encouragement in your life and that she helped pull you through and helped you fit in and feel that you had the community support behind you. I'd love to hear about your family. Will you introduce us to them and then the role of sports within your family?
Current family and the role of sports. My husband and I, we have our son Sterling, and he's a senior at high school. He is a multi-sport athlete, plays football, he's a wrestler. He's taken up some track loosely in his senior year, but did many sports when he was young. There was a travel league. At one point, he was doing 3 travel sports at a time. So he was traveling for football, then travel baseball, travel basketball. That did get to a point where we thought, okay, you're going to have to choose. I have a daughter who is 27 years old, Taylor. I had Taylor when I was going into my final year at Butler University. So I finished college with a baby, a dramatic finish, challenging, and went to law school as a single parent. Her father was a hurdler, went to college and played football and was a great athlete. We had her run in a school track meet when kids are young in elementary school. And she started off the 400 and it looked promising. And Taylor was dead last, and I mean last. And we looked at each other and just went, I guess it skipped her. But she ended up being the artist. And so I think if I could say anything, it's just being really open. Not every child's going to have that athletic gift. That's okay. And I think it was in a lot of ways better because Taylor exposed all of us to things we had never done. And she performed professionally in theater by the time she was in elementary school. I think the message here is be willing to look at the data that's in front of you and accept it. You can spend years of a child's precious life and a lot of money really trying to push the athletic thing, and they're missing out on their calling. And she had a real gift for the performing arts. We had a sense of humor about it. And it was clear. It was just as clear as it was when I was walking really early and tumbling immediately thereafter. It was really obvious that she wasn't going to be an athlete. And we put her during a winter break as a very little kid at the Children's Theater Institute and let her do a play. And when she walked out and was in Stone Soup, Taylor was saying her lines and it was dramatic and she had memorized it. And my parents and I looked at her and said, I think this is her thing. We still introduced her to plenty of other things. So I would just say, be open to giving access. Success is about access. Give access and be willing to accept the data that's in front of you and pivot. Kids have the right to explore and find their gift, and she did. With Sterling, it was similar to my story. It was extremely obvious. The first time we put him on a football field, he was 4 years old in New Orleans. He was playing at middle linebacker, and middle linebacker stays in the middle of the field. And he played offense too. He played quarterback. And the middle linebacker is supposed to stay home in that position. And they're shutting down things that are coming into the middle of the field, containing the outsides, trying to let the player not get to the secondary. But Sterling decided to play like he was a lineman. And from the middle linebacker spot, he was so fast and so aggressive, he ran around the entire line of scrimmage and tackled the quarterback in the backfield and sacked the quarterback. We said, okay, yeah, he's different. It's the equivalent of seeing a child who can naturally play the piano by ear and denying them that opportunity. Mm-hmm. That's how much he loved it. That's how good he was. We got the best of both experiences with someone in the arts and someone in athletics, and they had similar passion. He would have felt emotionally almost abused if we had said, this is a dangerous thing. We can't allow you to do it. He would have been devastated. We had no designs on him being a football player. We put him in all kinds of things. He did gymnastics when he was little. He cried before every session. He was good. He just cried. I don't know why.
It wasn't his thing.
He
It
wasn't
wasn't his
comfortable.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
You listen to your to their gifts and their desires. It's funny when you mentioned Stone Soup. I remembered I was taken back to my second grade Stone Soup performance. We did the same thing. Just terrific that your children have been able to shine in their talents and that they've received your support. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm still thinking back to your comment of having Taylor, junior year of college, finishing college on time as a young mom. And I'm just inspired. Exactly the purpose of this podcast is to highlight the moms behind the athlete, because we are all doing amazing things and we should be applauded for that. Thank you for sharing that part. Can you tell us about your professional career, obtaining your JD, and then just navigating being a young mom at that time?
Sure. I went to law school not because I had examples of lawyers in the family. There were none, but being a single mom, I was just motivated to provide. And I took inventory of what my skills were. And by that point, I'd really emerged into doing some sort of speech and debate, was very strong at writing, and applied on the last day the applications were accepted. I'd had some exposure, met an attorney, and thought, well, I can do that. So it was in the last hour thinking about what were my goals. The motivation was really, I cannot be a statistic here. Single, young, Black mother. When people heard at school that I was pregnant, a lot of people counted me out. And we don't do that to young men. And there were certainly young male athletes who had children, and everybody kind of rallied around and insisted upon their success. And with me, it was for that tisk tisk, oh, what she could have been. I've shared this before, but I felt like they were talking about me like I was dead. And I thought, I'm just having a baby. It's not over for me. So that's why I went to law school. I was motivated to provide. I wanted to put Taylor in really good early childhood education, which is a huge factor in where kids are going to go. I had a full academic scholarship to law school, but I took out a student loan so that I could send her to quality early childhood education and use my student loan to pay for it. And that's how I went through school, worked at Hallmark on the weekends. Somehow we made it through and had good family support from both of my parents watching her. I started my career early on as a litigation attorney, did civil defense litigation for a large law firm in Indianapolis. We do what we have to do. I don't recommend that path. I made things hard. I think you can get a little addicted to the struggle story. Then you have to be careful about how many stories you have in life that are about overcoming, and ask, what role am I playing in making life harder than it has to be? While I'm glad it's inspiring, there were choices that I was making, I think, from a place of my own self-worth that weren't good. The world was my oyster. I was at Butler University, full academic scholarship, and by all these accounts, setting myself up for success. And it's quite a derailer. You have to make decisions differently. The moment that you're a mom, now every decision you make, from where you live, everything that you do is now all around what's the school system there. And you're making decisions that are driven by providing. The cautionary tale here, I never look back at what could have been. It was a great gift. I don't think I would have ever gone to law school had it not been for Taylor. It crystallized sort of a vision for what I could do. But you have to be careful about how you're making decisions. And in your young life, that's a time when you should be able to make the most selfish decisions. Where do I want to live? What do I want to try to do? And I kind of took that away. I made a lot of logical, practical decisions that did not feed my soul. And so because of that, in some ways, while on paper, I think people see what looks like success, and I always appreciate the respect, I feel behind on some things that I want to explore, because when you become a mother at 21, you put some things away. And I don't know that that has to be the case. A lot of that was my choice, but decisions become led differently. You can take 20,000 less, however much less, or decide maybe I'm not working, I'm exploring other things. You can make much different decisions when you don't have to provide for someone else. It's all been very positive and happy, but if anybody can gain anything from that, it's understanding. If you've got too many struggle stories, you've got to stop and go, okay, this consistent variable here is me. Things don't have to be hard.
Well, and I think it correlates to the fact that the things and the decisions that we make in our life are directly correlated to what's going on in our life at that time. So whether it's a potential career move, a career change, moving your family to a different town to be closer to family for support, whatever that is, the decisions that we make do tend to focus around what's going on in our life at that time. So I think it's beautiful that you recognize that you made those decisions based on being a young mom, but also evolving to the point where now what you're doing for either Sterling or for your current situation is different. And you still have goals and dreams and things that you want to do. And I think that's the beauty in it. Can you share with us a little bit about where you are professionally right now? And then maybe
Sure.
how your upbringing influenced how you've raised your children and where they are today?
Sure. So where I am now, we're going to be empty nesters, which is unbelievable. And Sterling's about to graduate. I took a big leap of faith almost a year ago and left a large corporate role. I was a director of talent training for a Fortune 130 company. Had an opportunity to work for a consulting firm and head up their people practice. So I'm vice president of strategy and change management for a local consulting firm and doing a lot of business development and representing different companies doing HR strategy, change management, learning and development. So doing a number of engagements that all are about supporting people and large corporate clients. That's my role now. In terms of my family's role in shaping career, at my age, I'm raised by baby boomers. So baby boomer influence is about security. There was a lot that influenced me, that there are things that I took on and replicated. And then there are components of that that I decided to raise Sterling differently. And Sterling and Taylor were raised differently. So I had a lot of the work hard, be smart, and Midwestern parents. And so a lot of that is work hard, be honest, be smart, have a good job, all of those things. I realized at 31 that that wasn't the total formula for success. You could do all of those things and still be fired from a job. And I was dramatically from a public political position and had to really ask, who am I? Taylor grew up with that same shaping. What you're supposed to do is get the good, solid job. So with Taylor, I pushed a lot, and my kids are 10 years apart. The focus was heavily on being at the highest level academics. It was all about getting into the best preschool, getting into the best private school at this level, and all the pushing the overachievement because here she is, this little girl who looks like me, and I want the best for her. So I'm passing along the same things that in some ways helped me be successful, in other ways made me very unhappy, made me very sad. The first one always, we mess that up. And then we get another shot if you have another one, and then you do a little bit better. But then the baby, you're like, whatever. Whenever the baby comes along, you're like, do you? So I learned a lot from Taylor and from my journey and what happened to me. And with Sterling, it was different. We always encourage him to be high achieving, but based upon just your best. The conversation was just different. And I had learned a lot more through being a professional trainer. I trained a lot of people around the country. I had a lot more soft skills and a lot more emotional intelligence in raising Sterling. So I kind of took the best of what I had learned, left the things that didn't serve, and we tried to hold him more. And he was more of a co-creator of where he is now than me being the architect and designing everything that you're supposed to do.
Wow, that is such a deep analogy to say that you were more the architect with Taylor and now Sterling has been more a co-creator. And just
Yeah.
that vision, like being able to visualize what that actually is and how it translated to who they are and becoming. Great visual. Thank you.
Yes, you really have the gift of speaking and your vocabulary and your storytelling. It's quite captivating. I'm so glad that your journey has led you to find this ultimate career for yourself. I also like how you talked about the struggle story and how we can get kind of caught up in that to look inward. You're very insightful into who you are. Wow, that's not something that can be taught. That's just innate. You're really
Thank you.
incredible.
Thank you.
Do you have any particular philosophy on sports? Since it was important to you and you learned so many life lessons, did you encourage him along the way once you saw his gift and his passion for so many sports?
The kids joke, they call me Coach Mom. And I think the philosophy and my focus or even brand as a parent has always been about training his mind. His physical gifts were really clear. I wanted early on to help him not embody the worst stereotypes about Black male athletes. I had a feeling that he was going to be successful, and I saw leadership qualities. What I started to do early on was reward the behaviors that I wanted him to repeat beyond his athletic performance. I was sort of in my head an all or nothing person. When I went through tremendous professional loss, I realized how dangerous it is to have all your self-esteem eggs in a bucket of performing. And it's why athletes can seem to be some of the most confident people who actually have some of the worst self-esteem, because it is completely fed by wins and losses, by metrics, how fast you run, how high you jump, your wins, your losses. And that's a dangerous place to live. I knew what that had done to me. When I experienced my first loss at 31, I took a big L in a career and I thought I was nothing. And I thought, if I can do one thing, I need to help him understand how to be a leader, how to shine the light on others, and how to understand his value outside of his performance. We did affirmation cards from the time he was very little. He would also go to bed listening to affirmations. He was 4, and I'd hear his little voice in the bed. I am enough, like in the bed.
I love that.
And we've done it
Oh,
for a
that
very
warms
long
my heart.
time. Yeah. And I put them on his mirror. I would put him in his bag. We write on his lunch every day still. He's 17, almost 18. We trained his mind. The other thing I did, Tara, was rewarded him for what we wanted to repeat. And that was one day he was playing Little League football in New Orleans. And I thought, look, nobody likes a jerk. Nobody likes that guy who he can ball, but he celebrates himself more than anybody else. So I said that I was going to give him money every time I saw him showing good sportsmanship. And I explained to him what that looked like, that you congratulate other players. And I said, Sterling, the light is always going to find you. Your role is to use this as a platform to do something greater in service to other people. Your job when you are out here is to shine the light on other people. I think what I'm most proud of is when people come to me and they tell me about little interactions with Sterling where he has smiled at them, where he has asked, how are you doing? Those are the skills that we need for a lifetime. Whether it's an athlete or someone else, it's about what's in our head. Do not let anyone speak negativity into your child's life. If you have to move away from them, whatever you have to do, you can't get that back. It takes seconds to undo that work and years to get their head back. I have been unwavering, and I have never cared what anybody thought about decisions around Sterling, because I knew what he had and what we had poured into him. And I would not, as long as he was under our roof, allow anyone to do damage to that. You have to be protective.
I'm feeling you right now. You are just raising such a beautiful person. The amount of work that we pour into giving our children confidence, believing in themselves, all those years, all those 18 years that they're at home, if they're in an environment where somebody is being so negative to them and trying to break down all that work that you've done, it's heartbreaking. And it's also an uncomfortable feeling in the world of collegiate athletes because they're adults now.
That's right.
You just have to trust in this strong person that you've raised, that you've poured yourself into, and giving those positive affirmations.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
That's so hard. And making those college decisions, everybody's selling. So you have to do your best to try to get behind that, to really see, is this person who they are demonstrating right now, showing themselves to be, or the moment that you drop your child off, are they going to turn into someone else? And all we can do is be careful about that culture of winners never quit, because it cuts against understanding that knowing your worth may mean you have to walk away from a situation. So we have to be careful when we do this winners never quit thing. Some people need to be released. That's not quitting.
Reach. So Heather, can you just tell us a little bit about his journey, the challenges that he faced, specifically the injury that he experienced, how it impacted him, how he was able to overcome? Just walk us through that.
Sure. When Sterling was a sophomore, pandemic has started. Students are wearing masks and it's August. He was at practice and we got a call from the coach, and I saw my husband answer the phone. He's listening, his face changes, and I heard him say, how bad is it? And then he hung up the phone and he looked at me and said, Sterling's hurt. And we just ran and got into the car. Sterling had broken both of his legs. A 1% of 1% injury that starts with Osgood Slaughter's. He had fractures at the tibial tuberosity where that tendon ripped away. Basically, your quad muscles are getting stronger, but you've still got baby bones. It was a non-contact injury. He jumped off the ground. He plays safety. He's a defensive back, and he was playing corner at the time in coverage, going against a receiver, leaps off the ground, and both legs just let go. So the tendon rips off of the knee. He's got 2 broken legs. We knew for sure when we get there, one of them is in the air cast, but he said the other one hurts too. And he was telling us, like, I think it's both of them. So Sterling had fairly immediate surgery, maybe 24 hours. There was no major bleeding or anything, but it needed to be surgically repaired immediately and had screws put in both legs. And when he was on the field talking about affirmations, what you say in that moment, I do believe that mothers, when you are a mother or a mother figure, there is a gift of seeing and hearing and knowing that you have if you're connected to a child in any way. I've always felt I had that with Sterling. And I just knew, as bad as it was, I don't know why I said this, but I kneeled down next to him and I put my mouth close to his ear because he was weeping. I know it hurt very badly, but I knew why he was crying. He was crying because he thought it's over. This is the end, because he knew it was serious. But I leaned down next to his ear and I said, I promise your dream is not dead. I knew, as bad as it was, something came over me before I even saw the x-rays that he's coming back from this. Sterling was in a wheelchair. I had to lift him out of bed to get him into a wheelchair to wheel him into the bathroom. He had to walk again and run again on the zero gravity treadmill and then train and go through all of these things to get back and land a Division I scholarship. We just put our heads down and said, this is this kid's dream. His prognosis was very good. Surgery went extremely well. Bones with young people heal very well. As dramatic as it was, it's not as severe as tearing an ACL. Those ligament injuries are far more difficult to come back from than the type of injury Sterling had. One of the things I did with him, a relative sent us Kobe Bryant's book, Mamba Mentality. It's a great book because every page is independent. It has a lot of little words of wisdom. It was far better than I ever could have imagined it would be. And I read pages of that to him every night before he went to bed. The battle is mental, to mentally get back, to stay in a good place and not get depressed. And then when you are back on the field, to find that dog inside again. You have to believe that you are better than anybody else to get out on a football field, play that position. Safety is the last line of defense. Tackle someone and to be in coverage after you've done this. That's what we worked on, and had a lot of support from really fantastic friends that brought him meals, and he had a lot of love. We were not alone. I will tell you, if you ever have a kid go through an injury, if anybody offers to help, just say yes. You won't know what you need. Those of us who have gone through this or who just want to help, that was a big lesson for me. I'd never received help like that. I didn't know what I needed. You'll be so thankful. Just let people help you.
It sounds like you approached it in the best way possible, as you've always been feeding his mind and giving him positivity, and your own experiences helping you realize what he needed and how important the mindset is. He's an amazing athlete. And I heard that there was a transfer in high school that he transferred senior year. What was the motivation behind that? And how was this process?
Sure. The decision was made in an instant. Whenever a parent decides to transfer an athlete, especially an athlete who was at Sterling's level from a known successful football program, the assumption is always this athlete is leaving for athletic reasons. My son began to come home and tell me about things happening in the environment. COVID really impacted a lot of large public schools. When you've got socioeconomic factors that are such that school is a place of stability for a kid, it's where they consistently get meals. It's maybe where they have a counselor who's like a parent. There's just a lot of complexity when a school is juggling all of that, and then that is disrupted significantly by COVID. Those students were home like a year and a half. I mean, I stopped even counting. Sterling was doing remote school. Some kids did a hybrid. He chose to do all of his remotely. When they came back in person, it was like the Jack in the Box toy, but Jack had gotten totally out of the box and couldn't get it back in. The students struggled to do basic things with order anymore. It just had a disproportionate impact on his school. And because of that, there were some things happening that really became safety issues in schools. This is not a private story. These things are publicly known. The dramatic fights, challenges that are in big urban school environments. You've got one life. You have one chance to get through these 4 years. And these kids had 2 years completely taken from them with COVID. No school dances, nothing. And I just saw the impact that the stress of all of it was having. When kids are struggling to be on task, when things are happening in school bathrooms and your child saying, I'm strategic about my day so that I stay away from these things. You don't want your kid focused more on that than their academics, their own health. I heard enough one day. I literally looked at him and I said, that's it. We're leaving. It was a split-second decision because you just know if you're willing to have the courage to listen to yourself, you always have the answer. It's just often very inconvenient. Whether we call it the spirit moving or the universe or your intuition, whatever it is you call it, everybody has it. Do you have the courage to move when that voice says move? Thank God I did. Kids won't tell you straight out because they don't want to be responsible for that. No child wants to be responsible for making decisions like which parent do I want to live with? Where do I want to go to school? I mean, why would we ever ask someone whose brain is developing to make those decisions? But they will leave you breadcrumbs because they're trying to tell you. And what I realized was he dropped another breadcrumb and I went, we're out of here. At that point, I knew there was a strong possibility he may never touch a football field the rest of high school because the way the transfer rules are set up, the deck is completely stacked against you. I don't recommend any parent go through this. It is a losing battle. Parental freedom. We have given parents a lot of latitude now if you want to use public funds for private schools, school choice, and all of these rights that you see people talk about. If you are the parent of an athlete, you have no rights. You're free to change schools, but we'll take everything that your child has worked for away from him or her because we can. If you really take time to go read these statutes, all of these processes need to be undone. They were intended to prevent recruiting. That's what transfer rules were supposed to address. It's when a school is actively recruiting athletes and poaching to build a program. But that's not who the burden of proof is placed upon. It's all put on the parents to prove that you're not doing this for athletic reasons. And the only thing that has to happen is for some athletic director with the strike of his pen to check a box saying that you are ineligible and you are in an almost impossible uphill battle. It is by the grace of God, my persistence and insistence, and some cooler heads prevailing who really took a look at the situation and thought, this is a lose-lose for everyone because to make your case, you have to point the finger at and hurt people who you don't want to hurt. No one wanted to hurt anyone, and I don't think ill of the school that he left at all. He's got lifelong friends. There are some phenomenal adults in the building. But when you decide to make a move, some people will let you know who they really are and that they are not interested in the best interests of your child. And sadly, there are enough of those people who preside in powerful roles in athletics and administration. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. I will tell you, our outcome is rare. There have been plenty of kids following this with the same kinds of issues and even more dramatic cases, including people presenting evidence of mental health regarding other schools, documented evidence of what the environment was doing to their kid, and the powers that be denied their children the right to continue their sport. How that impacted recruiting. Kids in the class of 2023 were highly impacted by COVID eligibility and the portal. It was devastating for some of these kids. We're so grateful that Sterling will go on to the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Mass. Phenomenal coach and program. There are some extraordinarily talented athletes in all sports who never got an offer. And not even a year later, if they were in this cycle, they would have Power 5 offers. Everybody's offers would have been higher in division than what they had. And people who had zero would have offers if they were in this cycle. Sterling's decision to transfer, it's a close-knit circle. Coaches are friends. And so there's always interest that will suddenly dry up because there might be friendships. Fortunately, he wasn't too impacted by that. I think he was more impacted by the injury. He was late to really coming on. But no regrets. He's had the best of both worlds. He went to two amazing places. He's had the best of two very different schools in terms of what it's done to shape him as a leader and his ability to connect with people. And the decision to transfer has been nothing but a win for Sterling. And what it's done for him for college readiness has just been extraordinary. Things are right for people at different times. We think in such finite and linear terms. You start here, you do that for 4 years. People don't like this portal thing. I'm like, get over it. We all have free will. We have free free agency. So why do we want to raise athletes differently, where we condition them to believe they are owned? And how does that translate into relationships? How will they deal with a relationship where someone is treating them very badly if we've programmed them to believe that they owe everybody? What are we saying about what rights athletes have? And I think that's changing. If you're worried about athletes leaving, be a better leader. It's what corporations have to worry about. How do we retain people? This whole system, it is going to create a new generation of leader and coach. And that's going to be interesting to watch, because you can no longer lead from power and authority and obligation. You have to create a compelling experience as to why this athlete should stay with you when they have options.
I definitely think his experience and all that you went through with the transfer process in high school has prepared him and you for the college readiness. And like you said, we all do have that free agency. Going back to the idea that the decisions that we make have so much to do with the situation that we're in right now, translates with athletics as well. So the decision that he makes for that time, whether it's high school, college, professionally, will directly correlate to the experience and where he is at that time. And I think that is for all athletes. I agree with you. The retention, the type of program that you run does matter. Time will tell how this whole transition with the transfer portal and all of that will play out for different sports, for different reasons. You touched on a lot there.
I know.
Did.
I'm passionate about it. I'm a huge hypocrite, though, because when it comes to your own kid being recruited, you'll be super irritated with the portal. You're like, oh, these old people in this portal are taking my baby's money. And then on the other hand, you're like, you can't control my child. He should have free agency. I mean, it's hypocritical.
You've explained it all so well, though. Your analogies and your wisdom. I love the breadcrumbs and I just picture everything so perfectly. But you guys did. You defied all odds. They told you you're in an impossible situation. In fact, when we were going to be interviewing you and I knew that your son had transferred, I definitely thought that it was related to athletics. And as you explained, it wasn't at all. It was the environment that he was in. It was what had happened with the school systems and COVID. And he just wasn't in an environment that he could thrive. And he's just overcome so much between his injury and then with COVID and trying to come back and not being in a good environment. I'm glad that you were so supportive and saw the need for change and just advocated for him.
Thank you very much.
For sure, the best is yet to come for Sterling Smith, for sure.
How have you been able to manage all your professional opportunities? You're choosing where you want to spend your energy. How has it worked out for you to be so successful professionally and always being there for your son's games and being so supportive?
I think I just got to a point where I became comfortable setting boundaries, because we teach people how to treat us. And the mistake is trying to do it all, marketing yourself as if you can do it all. And things have changed. There was a time when you almost left the mommy side of you at home and never really even talked about children much. Early on in practicing law, I knew women that waited until they were 7 months pregnant before even disclosing, because that was the real concern, that if people know billable hours are going to dry up, that's going to affect partnership track. These are real decisions women were making, and we can't forget that. But a lot has changed. And now we know with COVID and Zoom and Teams, we see people balancing work, and there goes a toddler running behind the camera. And there's not a lot of criticism for that, or it doesn't immediately affect somebody's career track, but it is still a reality. So there are opportunities that I missed out on because of choosing to be a sports mom. I will never forget, not long before my decision to make this recent move, it's time to talk about succession planning, which is part of any workplace. You know, who's going to be up next, who is in the line of succession to be promoted. And you're supposed to get some feedback about that. And a leader said to me how well I had been doing and how highly everybody thought of me. And all these executives said this, and it was all positive. But we know Sterling doesn't graduate for 2 years. And I just full stop. If you get to a certain age, you don't put a good face on it anymore. If something makes you angry, you get comfortable showing it. I just stopped putting a good face on microaggressions in the workplace, discrimination against women, women of color, women who have children. you are either meeting and exceeding expectations at work and eligible for promotion, or there's development. The fact that you've chosen to also be a visible and active sports mom has nothing to do with the conversation. So the fact that a leader would make the decision to tell me that, it tells me that this was actually talked about in the room to justify why something was going to be withheld from me. You have to accept the reality that by deciding to be really present for critical years, the decision makers often still fall into certain categories. And sadly, some women in corporate America, in order to play the game, are still making adverse decisions. Not in every organization. But I thought that was astonishing. And I just said, don't say my child's name. He has nothing to do with this conversation. It was just a full boundary. And the thing is, I'm very comfortable with the fact that there were opportunities, both me and my husband. My husband was extremely involved. I traveled for many years, all hands on deck. I mean, he was doing everything for Sterling when he was very little for many years with my travel. He missed opportunities because we couldn't relocate. We weren't willing to relocate. We weren't willing to take Sterling out of schools. He was a very hands-on dad. So we both have awareness and have received actual feedback, which, by the way, as a lawyer and someone in HR, don't ever tell someone that those factors played a role in why you're not going to promote them. Don't ever do that. But we both were acutely aware that our decisions around Sterling did impact us professionally and have no regrets about that. I was one of those people that thought you can have it all. I've been able to balance it now by setting reasonable expectations. What you see is what you get. People know who I am when I show up. I don't try to pretend that I can compete with someone whose life is different from mine. And I'm not trying to put in the hours and live at work like someone who's maybe chosen differently. There's no judgment of that. This is what I choose for right now. Although I have to work very hard, and so does Corey, people know. It's funny. We don't have to say anything now. Okay. Everybody knows it's the fall. Don't bother Heather. I mean, at work, they're like, no, we're not going to schedule anything after 3 on Friday because we know that's Sterling's game.
That's
and
also respect too.
It is
because
respect.
It's acknowledging that balance.
Yeah. So it's just about teaching people how to treat you and understanding not every work environment is going to work for you. If this is what you choose and you're trying to raise an athlete, you got to be all in. There is a lot. It is very hard to do that and give your whole life also to career and have any health and sanity and any shred of a relationship left. It's kind of a long answer, but that's what balance looks like these days. It's just people know.
It's a great answer. Thank you for talking about the boundaries that you need to set.
Let's talk about going forward. How much of a forward thinker that you are, Heather, and just obviously very intelligent. You've utilized your professional career and your experience to help set Sterling up for success as a college athlete. Can you share with us insight into your plans, how you imagine it will impact him going forward, looking at setting up an LLC for him, and how you can best manage his career as a collegiate athlete?
Sure. So 2 things, the personal side and then the business side of how will we set Sterling up for success in college. The first thing is children should not have to carry the burden of your sadness to college with them. Whether we're married in a relationship or single parent, our children worry about us, I think, more than we realize. When our children go off to college, they wonder, are we going to be okay? Because so much of our lives have been focused on them and helping them get there. They kind of wonder, well, who's she going to be if she's not doing this? Are they going to be okay? And depending on the foundation we're standing on in our relationships, they know where all the cracks are. We think we've hidden stuff. We have not. We're not that smooth. Are they going to be okay? Will they get along without me? Children worry, I think, if they feel they are the glue that's holding everybody together and they're going somewhere. So I would say get your own house in order. That's what I'm working on. We started going on big vacations this year. Sterling was like, where are y'all going? You're going without me? What are you doing? I got intentional about not waiting until they go to start working on your dreams. Don't have a bucket list, just have a vision board. Bucket list, it involves the word die, like before I die. Focus on a vision. I have a vision board on the other side of my closet upstairs. I got intentional about we've got to cling to each other here a bit. And if you're on your own, take the trip, buy the bag, get the shoes, whatever your thing is, you've got to start pouring into yourself because it is scary. because you start staring down the big question, who am I? Why am I here? And when we have been answering a lot of that through our children, you can get into an interesting place. I've been all over the map as he gets ready to go. I'll cry over just whatever. So focus on you. From a business perspective, I started doing some interesting things that I'd learned about, and I did set up an LLC. Our tax advisor says, be careful about how much you think that's going to help you on taxes, but it's probably smart given all the travel to think about that. There could be NIL opportunities, but I started working on Sterling's credit and started building up travel points. So I was very intentional about credit cards on different airlines, building a lot of points so that we can travel. It really helps when you have expenses to just try to think about, how do we consider this a brand? I mean, that's the exciting thing about NIL. It's a fallacy that you have to be a 5-star athlete. So I've tried to tell him, think about building relationships. Where do you go to eat frequently? And how can you use your platform? It's tough. He's still young. Getting them to post at the frequency they would need to and build up followers, that's kind of a focus. I have a vision board that says 1 million followers. How do you get to 1 million? I can't say we've done a lot there, but at least start with a vision. Let's make the most of the time that he's there. More importantly, he's already thinking about internships. The end goal from college is to get a job, have a career, and be self-sustaining in some way, whatever that looks like. What are we doing from day one to begin with the end in mind? My unsolicited advice is dig deep about their internship and their mentorship programs that are specifically for athletes. There are some big-time schools. Go look at what their athletes are really doing when they leave there. Some schools have very structured programs where they can show you exactly where people are going. You've got to be really open to what's best for your child. Go where you can have it all. Whatever your all is, you shouldn't settle for less than that. You're going to go out there and work really, really hard and generate revenue for these programs in some cases and be a part of building their brand. So you have to understand what's in it for you. You got to get out of that high school mindset. We're not just competing for trophies and to get varsity letters anymore. This is a business, and you have to see yourself as a brand and really think about that.
Yeah. And it's so cool. You really are so forward thinking, as Destiny mentioned. You are smart. You're looking into what these schools are doing after athletics. How are these athletes prepared? What are they doing? You don't need to be a 5-star athlete at all, like you mentioned, to have success at NIL. It's open for anyone. Any opportunities. You've just got to go out there and take them. Going back to what you said about our kids, that they worry about us. I'm glad that you pointed that out, because we haven't spoken to anybody who's mentioned that. And boy, is that true. Yeah, they so really worry about us. When my youngest was off, like, are you going to be okay? Like, she's very sentimental. And what's going to happen, when I leave? And you don't want them to carry that extra burden.
Right.
It's smart that you're thinking, make sure you invest in yourself. Don't put that weight upon them that they feel like they are everything to you, which they are. I mean, they're everything to us, right?
I know.
But you don't want them to feel that, because it isn't up to them. It's up to us as parents, as people, to determine the direction of our own lives.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention the vision board that you said. I love it, because people say bucket list all the time. That's right. It's when you kick the bucket. That's when you die. No,
Let's
this
not
is
talk about that.
Right? This is the vision.
You just put such a beautiful bow on all of that. Like, you just found a way to just say, hey, this is how personally where we need to be, how we should be looking at things, how we can empower our kids going forward, how we can look at the recruiting process. You just took a little gift that you had given us and just wrapped a little bow on it, tied it, and made it neat and tidy and beautiful, and just delivered it to us. And that was just excellent.
Thank you. I'll call both of you, though, when I'm a hot mess and it doesn't look this polished. I mean,
you and I will be going through it together.
Yes. I might be calling you, because you are what a great resource. All of us are learning so much from you. You've been giving us fantastic advice throughout this whole chat session. If you have any other last words you want to put out there, but we just really appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time to share your story and all your wisdom with us.
you so much. You're doing something that's on my vision board. It has podcasts, and I've got a visual of podcasts. And so I just so admire and respect what you're doing. You just said we're not going to wait till we have it perfect. We're just going to start doing it. And I think that's really the biggest lesson is what you're demonstrating is just start doing it, whatever the thing is. The only final thing I do want to share is something that I always see people say about athletes that bothers me. And it's always a great debate. And it's the word humble, that athletes ought to be humble. If you look up the word, some of the definitions of humble mean to make oneself low. And I don't know how we expect athletes to do extraordinary things while also making themselves lower than others. To perform at the level that we're asking a college athlete, in this case we're talking about, and the trajectory that our children are going on, it means you have to have a mindset where you believe you are better than anybody else. You have to put yourself in a mindset where you say, I am the best at what I do. There's a duality to that. Who Sterling is walking around every day when you interact with him, there's a completely different Sterling. He is nothing nice. And he is anything but humble out there because think about what he's been through. As someone who had 2 broken legs, what does he have to say to himself to believe nobody's getting past me? He's not small and he hits really hard. But when he was much smaller in his mind, he was bigger and he played big. So I guess just think about what it means to tell your athlete to be humble versus stay in gratitude, lift others up, be thankful. But when you ask someone to show humility, you are asking them to lower in some way and not think that they are up here. But they're different. You can't think that extraordinary people are walking around being average with average thoughts, doing average things. It's just offering another way to look at it. And why do we need people to be humble? I mean, on the one hand, we're like, yeah, go out there and destroy them, knock their head off, but be humble about it. I mean, that they don't belong together. They just, in a sport like football, that does not belong. And why not celebrate yourself a little bit? And it's really just a conversation. And that's just the amount of pressure. Those are the mixed messages that they're getting. When it suits us, we need you to go out there and be better than everybody else. But as soon as you've done that and been victorious, oh, for heaven's sake, hold all that in and be super respectful about it. I don't know how you do that.
Well, lower yourself. Lower yourself.
Lower yourself. Yeah. Don't be too proud. Make thyself low. So it's just something to think about.
Through all of this, it's been the messaging. What are you saying to yourself? What are you saying to your children? How are you lifting them up and encouraging them? Like you said, words matter. So all of it comes back to this whole thing of how are we having conversations? And are those conversations going to be meaningful to the point where they get to where they need to be? That individual that we are pouring into. Like, how are we uplifting them? How are we encouraging them? What are we saying? And just being mindful of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you for your time.
If you'd like to follow Heather, her Instagram handle is HB_Smith. And you can email her with any questions or for speaking engagements at heather@heatherbolejack.com. We're so glad you've joined us today. Thank you for listening. Upcoming episodes and show info can all be found at sportsmomreport.com. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. We'd love to hear from you. So please reach out to us with any comments or if you or someone you know would like to share their story and connect with us.